you so much. So now the next part of the program is a roundtable discussion with the editors of the books. These are the newly published books of the Central European Academic Publishing, which our guests, the lecturers, and also the LLM students received over the course of today and yesterday. So we would like to give some insights about these books, and I would like to invite Professor Dr. Péter Kovács, former judge of the International Criminal Court and research professor of the Péter Pázmány Catholic University in Budapest, to join the editors at the floor, as well as Professor Dr. Péter Pacolai, Dr. Anikó Rajz, and Dr. Katarzyna Zombori, research director of the Central European Academy of the University of Miskolc. Thank you so much. I think that the stage is set up, so I will change my place. I hope that this is working. So I will have a few questions to the editors of the book. As I have already said, we can welcome here Professor Dr. Péter Pacolai, Professor Dr. Péter Kovács, Dr. Katarzyna Zombori, and Dr. Anikó Rajz. So first I would like to thank you for not only for taking the role, the not very easy role of editor of these books, but also for taking your time to come to these Human Rights Days and to join this roundtable discussion, which is, I think, very important in promoting also these books to the audience. So first of all, I would like to kindly ask you to briefly introduce the books that you have been editing. What would you like to highlight from these books, and especially what it meant for you to edit these books, and why do you think that these books are special, especially in the scientific literature market, let's say, particularly in the Central and Eastern European region? So, dear Professor, please, in the order as you wish. Professor Péter Kovács, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. And this is the book, by the way, about the universal protection of human rights. So I think that it was a very good idea on behalf of the Central European Academy to issue a book about the universal protection of human rights, which is completed by other books concerning the European protection or concerning environmental protection. But in fact, first of all, I have to pay tribute to the enormous work made by my young colleague Nóra Béres, who was the co-editor and who assumed a very difficult task to enter into correspondence with the different authors and to give them advices, counsels, and so on. So in fact, she was a very effective co-editor. And really, I have to thank her all what she has done for this. Concerning the main topics of the book, is of course the different aspects of the universal protection. But what is, I think, very interesting in this book is not only the so-called general subject, so how René Cassin and Eleanor Roosevelt were working with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and how the Universal Declaration has become, in fact, a customary law nature, international instrument, or even kind of a jus cogens according to some international jurisprudential dictum. But in fact, what are the cases dealt by the different monitoring bodies concerning the countries where we are from? So in fact, when there are chapters on the migration, on the discrimination on different aspects, whether discrimination on sexual and gender basis, or discrimination, or the Convention Against Racial Discrimination, and so on. So these are not only the well-known Canadian or Scandinavian cases or German cases which are shown, but in fact there are so many cases which are presented by the authors. And so I think this is very important, and this is one of the main, let's say, contribution of our region to a kind of a common thinking. So I think this is very interesting. And another issue which is interesting for the old man as I am, which is for you quasi natural, is that how the way of thinking of Central and Eastern Europe been changed from the communist period when all the different forms of international monitoring was seen with suspicions, considering that this is a kind of an undue intervention in domestic affairs and so on. And in fact, after the changing of the regime, very soon in Hungary, in Czech Republic, Slovakia, or ex-Yugoslavia, scholars and practicing legal communities and politicians, but the fact that there is no problem to accept the international monitoring, this is quasi natural. And so I think this is very important from this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I ask Professor Pacolai to introduce a little bit the ECHR book?
Thank you very much. One sign of that you are almost at the end of your career, that they don't ask you to write an article or to write a chapter, but to write an introduction. And I have almost a collection of introductions to the European Convention's handbooks, including the last Hungarian handbook. And this time, honestly speaking, so I have already experience and ideas about an introduction to a European Convention thematic book, but I was difficult situation with this one, because basically everything was written in the book that I had on my mind, or I had published in the previous handbooks. First of all, because especially the introductory chapters, the general chapters, also introduced in very detailed and very compact way, for example, which is my fixation, the historical background, etc. So basically, after some general concepts and ideas, which you can then find in the text of the book as well, I finally listed the chapters of the book, the kind of profound ways, and I have to say that it's, the concept of the book is not very complicated. Go article by article through the original freedoms included into the convention in 1950, and then the human rights freedoms protected by several articles of the protocols adopted later on. So that was the structure. And here I have to mention, also I checked now that the only one name is mentioned that edited by myself, this book, but honestly speaking, it was the incredible background work made by those people of the Central European Academy who are not mentioned as, how to say, as co-editors or something like that. But basically, I think that I have to say that the basic work was done inside, and I had just to enjoy to read the chapters that we received, and even as the structure was given by the already following the structure of the convention. I had even not a great task to do that. But I have to say that grateful for all the contributors, also those who are present here, and for the background editing staff that really presented. I think this will be a well updated book on the European Convention. actually after the 75th anniversary, and what is the peculiarity, of course, that focusing on the Central European aspects of which will be unique for the present day. And I'm grateful for all those who helped me.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Dr. Katarzyna Zombori, what is your experience with editing the book about human rights outside Europe?
Thank you. I have a feeling that my book is the most exotic one represented here, and it's the most unique one because it is not about Central Europe. In that book, the authors, together with the authors, we tried to explore how human rights are being protected in different parts of the world. The different regional human rights systems, they play significant role in the global architecture of human rights, but here in Europe we usually concentrate on the universal system of human rights protection, and the European one is the closest to us, obviously. But sometimes we forget that also there are other parts of the world. So that book is about that, about the inter-American human rights system, African human rights system, and also human rights in other regions of the world, Asia or the countries of predominantly Islamic culture. The book demonstrates that these regional systems, they have common roots in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948 under the auspices of the United Nations. But still, over the time, they have been adapted to regional contexts, different cultural circumstances, historical experiences, and that makes them very unique. They also influence each other, and the book tries to explore these influences as well. Of course, we present legal frameworks, institutions, but we also go into details as to the case law of the regional human rights bodies to present different human rights concerns in different regions. As the editor of the book, I have had several challenges. So from the beginning, the idea was to have authors from Central Europe and peer reviewers who are representing the respective regional human rights systems. As for the authors, it was relatively easy to find authors who were willing to write about the inter-American human rights system or about the Africa, but it wasn't so easy for authors to deal with the Islamic perspective of human rights or human rights in the Commonwealth of Independent States. So finding people willing to write about these systems was quite challenging, even though these countries, they also have adopted some human rights documents, initiatives. It was also quite challenging to find the peer reviewers from exotic parts of the world, but together with the scientific community, we somehow made it, and I think the effort was well worth it, because at the end of the day, the book is a fusion, a very valuable fusion of Central European thought and authentic expertise. So for me, as the editor, it was really enriching and rewarding, and I hope that it will be so also for the readers.
Thank you so much. And dear Dr. Anikó Rajsz, could you also please share your insights about the edited book about human rights and the environment?
Thank you very much. As you can see, I didn't commit it alone. So she's just sitting next to me. We also have to emphasize the great role that Anikó played in that book. And maybe we could have been exotic a few years ago, but as His Excellency mentioned in his previous presentation, the connection between human rights and the environment is becoming a more and more interesting and important topic, not only in Europe, but also elsewhere in the world. So we try to try to deal with this issue. Also, we had some chapters which looked outside of Europe. We had a chapter which concentrated on the United Nations, and we had a lot of chapters which concentrated on ECHR practice and actually the European perspectives, or sometimes the Central European perspectives when it came to the treaties or certain special conventions like Aarhus or Espoo. And it was also, I think, a very interesting book in a way for us, of course, because we decided to do it. But it actually in two senses. The first one is that I have to mention the name of Dinah Shelton, who I have to tell you that I have a very special position here because Enikő was my doctoral student, and I was the doctoral student of Péter Kovács. So I'm just like in the middle. But he made me acquainted with Professor Dinah Shelton many years ago. We can say decades ago. So yesterday, but it was. I would like to quote her because she has written a lot of books and a lot of articles about the importance and the connection between human rights and the environment. And there's one place where she says that let us think about the possibility that actually the right to a healthy environment is not only an integral part of this whole system, but the prerequisite for the practice of all the other human rights. Because if you don't have a healthy environment, then how can we talk about? We can talk about right to a fair trial, but nice try. So I think the idea is very interesting, not only because what we've heard beforehand in the presentation of Professor Paculai on the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, and actually the interpretation of the court as to texts that do not exist in the convention, but as to the whole issue, the connection between human rights and the environment, and the whole connection between the responsibility of the present generation towards future generations, which is kind of what we work for today. That what we do now should affect positively those who are going to be here when we are going to be done and gone. So I think it was one aspect which was very interesting, very important. I think that those who worked in this field had all met the work of Dinah Shelton or Alexander Kishore. I could name a lot of names in this regard. And the second part was that. In the chapter where we deal with, actually, our ombudsman deals with the United Nations system, he also places special emphasis on sharing the best practices. And when we talk about books, we talk about science, we talk about research, we're talking about teaching, but I think it's very important that what we do, that we put it into the practice. And I also serve as the Vice President of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, and last term too, and this term too, one of our major topics and tasks that we would like to achieve for mankind, actually, is to share these best practices throughout the world of course now it's environmental solutions. What we found in one place maybe, not necessarily, but maybe applicable in another, and then cost-effectively and quickly we could actually face the challenges of mankind together faster and more successfully. So I do think that the books that we've done here all have, of course, in environment, I know the special aspect, but in all the fields that we have mentioned here, they're not only going to be course books for you and books that you can look up and see for your research, but I think that they can all be used for some practical purposes. So that's why I'm very thankful to participate in this project.
Thank you so much, dear professors, for sharing your views on editing a book. I think it's also very interesting because it's not something that young scholars can experience, so it's something that is very exciting to see what possibilities are there in this respect. I would like to focus now on the Central European aspect, because all of you have mentioned that these books are special and unique from the perspective that they focus on a specific region, and that is the Central and Eastern European region, which is important for us because all of the students and the audience come from this area. However, I think we can agree that it's our experience is that there is not so much literature on that generally at the international level, which would specifically focus on these challenges, not on European challenges in general, but specifically on the challenges of the Central and Eastern European region. So now I would like to ask you also to share a little bit your insights about what specificities, uniqueness we can find in your books in connection with Central and Eastern Europe. So what are the major issues that you discovered in the framework that you were researching in this framework? Maybe start with Professor Pacalay.
Yes, thank you indeed. As I already mentioned, that I think the uniqueness and great added value of this book is that the chapters focus also on the so to say, Central European context, and this for me is important in applying the convention at the court, because how to say, as I also mentioned, was the official introduction that these countries had to change their system, etc., but a little bit saying that they were in any way in a more difficult and underdeveloped situation compared to the stable Western democracies. And I have to say that for me it's very important, because still you can feel at the court that, how to say, the same case is treated differently if the thing happened in Germany or in England or in Norway, that it happened in North Macedonia or Serbia or in Poland or Hungary. And I think that this initiative is good because how to say, the perspective is not that we have to keep up with the Western model, but we have our own community, and now we know much better each other and so on. Although I have to say that when I started my university career, or even before, where I was student, and speaking of the late 70s, there was this international organization of the comparative law, where Hungary played quite an important role as the leading East European country. And there was also a conference of this World Association in Budapest, where I could participate as a law student to help and it was a very important experience in my life. But so we were present even during that time as the window shop socialist country. But nevertheless, this initiative is much more important. We had the same idea at the court, but only for the Visegrad 4 countries to examine that. And we also turned the four of us to the respective ministers of justice at that time. But the only thing where this idea was flourishing or was here in Hungary with this institution, which I think is very important. And then I would be interested in how my Western colleagues are reading these articles. Of course, these very important cases, also, let's say, these two Polish cases that I mentioned, they're everywhere. So it's not that, on the contrary, because East European, Central European cases mostly end in violation, unlike the respective German, English, Norwegian cases are much more popularized than those who end up, whatever orbital violation of the convention happens, ends up in no violation, the judgment. So I think that this will have an impact on the court. But I have to say, not to misunderstand me, there is no division between Western countries and Eastern countries anymore. So now it's, as was there 15 years ago, but now everything is mixed. And the only bloc that exists, I think, is the Nordic bloc, because the Yugoslav bloc does not exist anymore. So that what remained is the Nordic bloc for the moment. Otherwise, everything is interwoven.
Thank you so much. Professor Kovács?
Well, I would like to say a few words about the dialectic of the inputs and the outputs. So on the one hand, there are these monitoring bodies who are issuing so many reports or general comments which are elaborated in the book. And so this is the input for the young scholars of the Central European Academy in order to work on that. And when they prepare their own contribution about the situation in their countries or in the countries of the region, so I guess that they realize such an output which can be an input for others, for other scholars of Western world or of other regions of the globe. This is the first issue that I wanted to mention. The second is that, in fact, we have common problems. And these problems, there are probably so many common problems, but let's allow me to mention only maybe three of them. And then this is the minority protection. Such minority situation, whether we are speaking about linguistic minorities or ethnic minorities. So in this issue is perceptible in nearly all of our countries. The second issue is the situation of the Roma population, which is very difficult to solve, and how to solve that. And in all the countries there are so many governmental subsidies and financial assistance in order to put higher the living standard and education qualification of the Roma community. Nevertheless, despite of all these governmental and other efforts, the achieved results are very modest. And I think that here we need a kind of a common need of thinking. And maybe the same can be said about the sexual discrimination issue, especially concerning equal pay for equal work. This is such a slogan which are mentioned so many times and since decades, and everybody knows that, okay, this is a good, reasonable aim to achieve. Nevertheless, probably you may confirm that there are still steps to take. And there is another, maybe the fourth common issue is that when our countries joined to these human rights treaties, and also concerning their, let's say, tough implementation mechanism, so accepting the interstate complaint system or the individual complaint system, our governments said, I mean, after the changing of the regime, that okay, we modified our constitution, we modernized our legal system, and our legal background is quasi the same as that of the United Nations, and these different conventions elaborated under the auspices of the United Nations. Nevertheless, what we can see, and this is well reflected in the contribution, is that there is a certain discrepancy between the nice and in itself correct legal structure and legal norms and the the realities on the field. And so, and very often the realities is based on are based on two problems, on problems of economics and budgetary issues on the one hand, on the other hand, a certain negligence on behalf of the state administration, whether in low level or middle level. So that's why it would be a great error to think that we achieved already our aim, we are only somewhere around the middle to go where the aim which has been solemnly proclaimed by these or in these conventions.
Thank you so much. Dr. Zombori, I know that you are in a special situation because of the book, which is about the other human rights systems, but I would be grateful if you could also share your views in what is relevant for the Central European region from your experience of editing this book.
So as I mentioned before, in this book we concentrate on specificities of these different regional human rights frameworks. And it turns out that even though each region has its own similarities, its own peculiarities, specificities, some regions share some specificities. And for example, let's take a look at the African human rights system. It's very collective, very community-oriented, and traditionally community-oriented. And so is, for example, the Asian culture of human rights, the Asian values. And I think that Central Europe is also very traditionally community-based. I think that the sense of belonging to a community here in Central Europe is very important. I mean, like belonging to a family or belonging to a nation. This is something that is also a great value here in Central Europe, just like in other regions which also share this collective and community-based emphasis. And these, let's say, similarities, they also might have some practical dimension, which I didn't realize so much, but then I went to a conference, and that's a practical and a very personal experience of mine. Last year, I went to a conference in Prague, in Czech Republic, and I met there lawyers dealing with human rights, also practitioners. And some of them were representing a human rights NGO from Poland. And it happened that during the lunch break, we sat at the same table and we were discussing things. We were discussing their experiences, their plans and developments. And they mentioned that they are into developing, they're putting much effort into developing close collaboration with African human rights experts and African human rights NGOs. I was a little bit surprised because this NGO is very famous for, let's say, representing Central European human rights agenda. So I asked for some explanation, and the explanation was that these Polish people from this Polish NGO, they have realized that the African human rights system is also focused on this community and community focused, let's say, and community oriented and family oriented as well. And the goal of this close collaboration would be to how to say, have some African NGOs and human rights experts who could submit amicus curiae brief before the European Court of Human Rights in cases that concern, let's say, these traditional values to support the Central European agenda. So I think that it speaks for itself.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for these views. And Dr. Rice, what would you highlight from the field of human rights and environment regarding Central Europe?
I have an easier role than Katarzyna had beforehand. I just would like to mention briefly 4 points, some briefly, some less briefly. Agreeing with the importance of the historic background, also the geographic conditions play a significant role in the specificity of the Central European or Central Eastern European region, and when it comes to human rights and when it comes to especially the environmental issues. So when you look around, when you look at the international environmental conventions, then you're going to see that we are very much interested in cooperation, very close to each other, a lot of countries. So we participate in many international treaties, unlike, for instance, the United States, who is not very much obliged to, to participate in issues like transboundary impact assessment. Well, that's not an issue here. It is. Or when you look at the not only the ESPO, but when you look at our conventions and our rivers, like the Danube or the Sava, or the cooperation that we need is the everyday life. So we have these big. In the case of the Danube, the biggest catchment area in the world, I mean, the most countries included, we have to cooperate, we have to coordinate our efforts, let it be floods or let it be just the quality of the water. Or look at the Helsinki Convention and the Water Courses Convention. It's obvious that this region is highly represented in being there because we're interested in finding solutions for these issues. The second issue is that actually when you look at the majority of the constitutions or fundamental laws in this region, they at least mention future generations, environment and human rights, the relationship between these two, something that is responsibility towards our children and so on and so on. So something which is partly coming from the Christian culture, of course, there is a kind of responsibility that we take seriously in this regard. These are the positive things. Let's come to the negative ones. The one is then, and there you can see the clear connection between human rights and the right to environment. Historic background again. Why are we so specific? Because of the communist past that we share, and because of the economic structure and social structure actually that was built during these decades. For the majority of you sitting there, it's something far, far away from history books. But you have to know that it was really a completely different economic structure. Sustainability was not even mentioned in that economic structure. So financial viability was not mentioned. Look at the structure of how for instance, the industry, just in Hungary, but you can name any other country, was created. The question where the raw materials come from was not an issue. So whether it travels thousands of kilometers, emitting a lot of I don't know, gases, greenhouse gases or whatever more, there was no question. The health of the people working there was not a question. Or look at Hungary is just a case, but everybody else had it. Look at the remediation issues that we inherited from the communist times. Just in the case of Hungary, we spent in the past 30-some years approximately almost 800 billion forints, which is kind of 2.1 billion euros on remediation efforts. That's just the state has spent on these issues. More than 4,000 places, 4,200 places where we did some remediation because it was necessary. Because at the time, the health, which is, the right to a healthy environment, means only that you have the right to drink healthy water and the right to breathe healthy, and you don't have to live surrounded by a soil which is completely polluted by BTEX and heavy metals and so on, which we inherited from those times. So there's clear connection, and we see that we all in this region inherited that there was this negligence. Well, this is a positive way of thinking, that it was only negligence when we have to face these problems, and this is a clear connection between human rights and environmental protection in this area, because we pay the prices, not only we, but our kids and our grandchildren are going to pay the prices of these environmental pollutions, because it's going to be affecting us all, health, food, whatever you want to connect to it. but it's not a Central European specificity. So when you look at the Mosfilm case in the inter-American system, or when you look at the Howald-Moore case in Switzerland, you can see that there, in other places of the world, or even in Europe, it's present there. But somehow we share this a little bit more than the others, and we have it with us for a longer period. And last point is, which is also a question of sustainability, is the issue of demography. And this is here in Central Europe a little bit more important than, generally it's very important in Europe, but in Central Europe a little bit more, because Central Europe in the last 3 decades lost 7% of its population, which is, I mean, we don't even reach in Europe the 2.1, which is desired, but in Central Eastern Europe we are behind that. But what we can see here is for this social aspect, because sustainability is not only environment, but it's also economic issues and it's also social issues. And for the social aspect of sustainability, the Central European countries, or many of them, stood up. And also there were some positive measures. Hungary is, of course, an example. We know the tax system. We know all the efforts that the government made in order to increase the fertility rate. But also in the Czech Republic, in Poland, or in Slovakia, there were positive effects, raising from 1.1, 1.2 to 1.4567 the infertility rates, which is essential for maintaining Central Europe as Central Europe. And we do think that it is also a special aspect. So from the historic background, the geographic background, the social background, and the economic background, I do think that also in the connection of human rights and the environment, there's a wide range of topics that we can call specific to this region, and where we can find specific answers to the challenges.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for all of you. For answering this question. And now I think that we still have time, a little bit of time, for another question, which is a little bit thought-provoking. I would like to ask you to share your views based on your experience, based on experience with these books that you have been editing, whether it is valid or is it time, or how do you see whether it's possible to think about a Central European, Central Eastern European school of thought regarding human rights?
Give a short answer, I don't know. But, but as regards already this achievement, this series of books, seminars, LLM program, etc. I think that's something that I have not expected a few years ago. But then whether there is a school or a school of thought specifically, I don't know, because I'm happy that we have this contact among each other, as we can read about the respective other legal systems, which for me is not just theoretical interest. It's very difficult to be an international judge who has to deal not with just the international convention, but to dig in the individual domestic legal system, where I don't know the language, I have no idea the legal system, etc. Nevertheless, it does not restrict some colleagues to give lectures on the other countries. Because I very much enjoyed when Italian judge gave me a lecture about the constitutional complete system in Hungary. Although, honestly speaking, not that myself, but my team was writing the constitutional court law. But it was amazing. And then, of course, I was a single judge, so I had to reject hundreds and hundreds of applications regarding first Ukraine, then to the ex-Yugoslav countries except Serbia, Croatia and Slovenia. And then now for long years for Poland, and it just took time, and have to consult with the national lawyers a lot about this legal system. So despite that we were under a rather primitive communist legal system, there are huge differences, especially since 1990, for example, to domestic remedies, where the domestic remedies already solved the problem. For example, the length of procedure, you can go to the Constitutional Court, is it protected by them and it solves a lot of problem or not? Because in the Hungarian Constitution there is no provision of the length of procedures, so therefore everybody comes to the Strasbourg court with that issue and so on. So I hope, but we are at the beginning, both personally, but with this development experienced in the last years, I am optimistic that we will form a community of law scholars, partly judges, etc., that constitutional judges that can contribute to each other and maybe have a specific and school of thought that also deserves the attention of other regions in Europe.
Thank you so much. Professor Kovács?
I can't but repeat what Judge Pacolai has said, that in fact from these ad hoc groups which were working around within these books, it's clear, and I hope that kind of a, let's say, stabilized network will come out with these young scholars, and also when they will not be so young, time with their at that time young students will follow these researches. So when we are speaking about Central European about the eventual existence of a special Central European way of thinking of human rights, I think also that there is a certain difference as to the problems. There are also a certain community of the same problems. I guess that the approach of the scientific approach of the Central European colleagues will not be really different from the approach made by Western European colleagues or colleagues from other countries. Here, the problem of the Islam and human rights in the Islam is a totally different issue. By the way, the colleagues in Bosnia-Herzegovina are probably the best placed in order to explore that issue. So what is also clear is that concerning the United Nations, we cannot expect such a tension between governments and the organization, which can be seen, for instance, within the European Union, or from some point of view within the Council of Europe. However, what is always clear is that there is a certain difference in all the countries between the political life and the scholarly life, and that's why we have to pay attention in order to be free and to preserve our legal and scientific integrity when exploring all these very tough legal problems.
Thank you so much. Dr. Zombori, could you also share your views?
I don't know if the editor of the book on the universal human rights system, Professor Peter Kovács, will agree with me, but I would say that the universal human rights system is in a way a sum of regional perspectives. And if we read about the drafting of the Universal Declaration and the members of the drafting committee and how they discussed the different approaches on human rights, I would say that these regional approaches have played a significant role. So in that sense, I would say that it is a valid thing to include these regionalisms and regional perspectives on the discourse, in the discourse on human rights. And it does not mean, let's say, challenging the universality of human rights. And it also, the same goes about Central and Eastern Europe. It can also give some inspirations, different emphasis to the universal human rights norms. Also, for example, not only while interpreting, but also while applying the margin of appreciation where applicable, of course. So I would say, yes, it is possible to think in terms of a human rights discourse in a Central and Eastern European perspective.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, but we are also very curious about the views of Dr. Anikó Rajsz.
Thank you very much. The short answer is yes. The longer is, actually everything has been said before me. I do think that that we have, despite the difficulties that we have been facing and we're going to be facing, we have certain issues which are actually something that is unique to this region for many reasons. As Katarzyna mentioned, every region has something like that, and we can find connections that you have previously mentioned as to your book with other regions. So I do think that it is very good if we think together. It's very good that we can relate ourselves to others. It's very good that we can find alliances in the way of thinking, in the approaches, but it's very important that we do not lose ourselves in the process, and therefore I think it's very, very important that we have projects like this or the Central European Academy in the whole, and I do think that it's very important what people sitting now in the audience and actually coming from more than 10 different countries are going to be doing in the future in this regard, that actually we have to be proud of our specificities, or we shall not forget them at least, and that makes us special. And I think that also in the legal and the scientific world it can create a value, an added value, something that is going to be useful also for the future generations to come. And therefore I do think that, I don't know how many of the younger people have seen the film of Casablanca. When I teach, I get rejected when I say, "Have you seen the Casablanca?" And when I'm on the podium, and I don't get many positive results from the students, but hope that you have. So there's a very famous line in it, and I just think this whole project can also be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So let's continue this way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the 4 participants of this roundtable discussion. I think it was very useful and very valuable to have a discussion with you, especially in this framework of as book editors. So thank you once again, and I would like to invite the audience for a coffee break, and we will convene at 11 to continue with the lectures.